Boom, 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 boom. This is the Overtime MMA broadcast.
You said it right, so I didn't have to correct you. That's very frustrating. I don't like it when you get things correct.
God damn it.
I like things that don't work, which is why we're still using YouTube after we just lost a broadcast. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We had a completed episode, and it was ruined.
Ruined.
Yeah. So whoever invented the Hangouts on air where you can stop the broadcast but not restart the broadcast, you can go fuck yourself. Or I'll fuck you for yourself.
Well,
I'll fuck you for
it's
you.
my understanding that they originally had a way to do that, and then they took it away.
Because why would you? Utility. You want to take useful tools away. That's what, look at Adobe Photoshop 1 compared to now. There's so many less tools now, and it's so much more streamlined. Right?
Right.
Anyway, we're not going to let it get us down because we're tough fuckers. And think of this like the worst training camp. This is us getting staph infection as Luke Rockhold before we fight Chris Weidman. This is us as Anderson Silva breaking a rib before we fight Chael Sonnen. Except as soon as we're done recording this, we get to go to bed with our beautiful fiancés, and life's not so bad, right?
Yeah, so what I guess I would say is, since this has been a horrible training camp, I better do some PEDs so I can get back in the game.
Oh, yeah. Brett's talking about a topic that we talked about for almost 38 minutes in the last episode, so hopefully we can bottle that lightning. But the point being, Kimbo Slice and Ken Shamrock both tested positive for banned substances after their Bellator 149 bouts. The great thing about this episode is that I didn't accidentally say UFC this time. Yay!
Yay!
So this is something that's hugely frustrating, and we have belabored this point when it comes to steroids for so much of our show. So some of the things we were talking about were more conceptual, like the fact that steroids can be used for recuperative effect. We talked about the idea of criminal liability for Kimbo Slice specifically because a guy was put in the hospital. Now
he died. They had to bring him back.
Yeah, and one of the points that we brought up was that Dada 5000, likely his hospital stay was as a result of his renal failure and heart attack. You could argue a causal relationship between Kimbo Slice, whether it was on steroids, EPO, but I think the crux of the argument and the part that I was enjoying most, Brett, was when we were talking about what constitutes a banned substance and why. Let's look at the legislative intent. Why are we banning the substance? Because one of the things we talked about was, for example, a diuretic. That's protecting me as the drug user, not you. You're not in a better situation because of it. So am I enhancing my performance? I'm stripping myself of water so I can weigh in at a lower weight. Things like that. But you were saying it better than I was, so take it away from me.
I don't really know. My problem has stemmed from when we talk about performance enhancement, the definitions are so vague, and it's just like such and such a thing is performance enhancing. This other such and such a thing is not. Can you tell me what the fundamental difference is between, say, steroids and creatine? It doesn't purely in terms of how does it enhance your performance? What is their job in your body? How are they different?
I truly can't. I think that Chael Sonnen said it best back in the day when he was talking about a performance-enhancing drug is anything that makes you feel better. It's anything that enhances your performance. And that could be anything from nanotechnology to creatine to, marijuana, arguably. Who's to say that someone in LSD wouldn't have a better flow state for their Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? One example I give it over and over again.
A no-hitter, one of the best, baseball games in history. Well, totally fucked up on LSD. So clearly that could be a thing.
Yeah, one thing that I always bring up is Luke Kumo, who was on, I think it's The Ultimate Fighter 1, the kind of weird guy. One time he got suspended because he had too much caffeine in his system. So we have these parameters, and sometimes it's a question as to who and why and what methodology. And so, obviously we're speculating because the Texas Athletic Commission hasn't said what Ken and Kimbo tested positive for. My guess would be HGH given their age. But again, completely speculating. So if you want to sue me, I've already admitted that I was speculating. So suck my dick. Maybe you can get some testosterone out of the tip of this.
It'll be harder to detect because it's human.
Yes, it won't be from a yam. Even though I am what I am.
Oh.
Thank you.
God.
And I'm vegan, so I am what I eat. I am what I eat. So
I feel like
one of the things we talked about was the consequences of the actions. And, specifically we talked about Hector Lombard and the fact that he's fighting almost a year to the day after his last fight where he tested positive for steroids. So has he really been punished?
I believe that the other name for what they did to him was vacation. I think that's what that is. Forced vacation.
Mandatory vacation?
Yeah, forced leave, Simple. He got paid then. He got to take time off. He's going to get paid now.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we were both campaigning for is if you're going to suspend somebody, if you're going to take some of their purse, take the whole purse.
Yeah.
The fact is, you had no business. It's like this. If you're looking at a licensure, right? I hold a license to do this occupation. You violated the terms of that license. You thusly do not deserve the compensation that you received therefm. So it's my opinion that if you have violated the terms of your contract, if you have violated the terms of your license, you should not be able to get compensation for it. If I, as an attorney, if I committed malpractice, I would have to recompense that person. It's malpractice. Am I wrong?
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's the thing we also talked about. What's the difference between any other street drug and steroids when they're both illegal to have, especially when it comes to steroids? If you don't have a medical doctor prescription for the cortisol or whatever it is that you think you need it for, what's the difference? I mean, why is it that because they have a license to compete, they aren't prosecuted on criminal charges? Because, I mean, the idea is we have the evidence, right? We know they're on it. And so isn't that enough, probable cause maybe to search their premises, get a warrant for their house? Who knows? Why not?
Yeah, and you look at all the things that go into criminal convictions, and USADA has a rebuttal period. All athletic commissions, to my understanding, have a rebuttal period. People have an opportunity to be heard. They do have a due process. So the fact of a criminal, action, the only difference would be the amount of scrutiny. You'd have to be beyond a reasonable doubt versus, more likely than not, a reasonably prudent person standard. You'd have something where it would be a criminal standard. Look at O.J. Simpson when he allegedly killed Nicole Brown Simpson. He did not get punished criminally, but he did get punished civilly. Reason being, there's a lower standard of proof. And so in this situation, sure, you can get suspended, and I'm sure it's a lower standard of proof, but why not take that extra step? You're kind of halfway there. You have evidence. You have their DNA. You have these things. There have been guys who've been busted for not even using humans' urine, stuff like that. Those things are verifiable. Those are tangible things that you can actually prove. The only question that we find ourselves is intent. That's what Yoel Romero, guys like that, are saying, oh, well, I never intended to take it. It's just the fact that all of this supplement were wrong. And that's cool, but there has to be accountability somewhere, right? Just because I didn't know it was illegal doesn't mean that it's okay. If I, as a person, drink spiked punch, I get behind the wheel of a car and I kill someone, I'm still driving while inebriated. I mean,
right.
There are huge issues here. I guess to wrap a bow around it, Brett, what do you think as far as consequences moving forward for both these gentlemen?
Well, I mean, consequences for Kimbo Slice and Ken Shamrock?
Yes.
None. Because I think maybe they get suspended, and unless there's because Bellator used to have in their contracts that you could fight, in other organizations, and especially with Bellator's coziness with Ryzen, why would there need to be any sort of blowback? Just have them go fight in Ryzen for a year.
Yeah, and I'm very interested to see how everything's going to play out with Vanderlei Silva, because really, what's the consequence? You're already doing it in Indian reservations. There's a whole muck of everything when it comes to how we're applying standards, when it comes to how we're applying punishments. I heard murmurings, people saying, hey, we should have a national commission. Brett, do you agree?
Sure, why not? I don't think it fucking matters, but sure, why not?
I don't like federal intervention, but this is something that I like because it's uniformity. One of the things that drove me absolutely crazy when I was in law school was criminal law, because we had the model penal code, we had federal law, state law, and there's so much variation. And I get it, you want to tailor make it because it's your state, blah blah. The fact is, malum in se, malum prohibitum. We know the things that are wrong. We know the things that are wrong because we prohibit them. You know, steroids because they kill someone are wrong. Diuretics because it helps you cheat. Those are wrong. But that's more of a rule than something that's actually reprehensible. And I think that all of us being learned individuals can sort those as they will, and we could have a national standard. And we already have the unified rules of mixed martial arts, and there's very little variation in there when it comes to state. Why not just do this? It drives me kind of crazy. So I think with that, we're done on the steroid subject. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and to use it, to use it as a nice little a hop, skip, and a jump into the next topic, we can talk about the heavyweight division in the UFC and talk about one Ben Rothwell, who was once suspended for elevated testosterone. He's been going on something like that. He thinks he could submit Fabrizio Verdum. Do you agree with that? Do you think he could?
I think if he lands that go-go choke, it's possible because it's very unique. And Josh Barnett was shocked and startled by it. That's something that you kind of have to hire somebody who knows what they're doing to teach you in a quick seminar. But other than that, I don't see any other submission that he's going to do it with. I don't see his jiu-jitsu being to the level where it's something that's beyond this very unique, specified maneuver. You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
where he maybe will find himself in that position and be able to take advantage of it if he finds himself there. But I think that something that's happening, though, is the UFC heavyweight division is like healthy for the first time ever, since Tim Sylvia was the fucking heavyweight least. Where you have like the top 10, top 12 is really bustling again. And Rothwell's over here with like the best resume out of anybody, in that top 10 by far, I think. But Miocic is getting a shot. So it's like Rothwell's over here trying to build his fight against Verdum, and the UFC's like been just turning a deaf ear to him. And I don't think he'll submit Verdum. I don't think that's the thing that'll happen. But do I think he deserves the chance? Yeah, I think he deserves it far more than Stipe Miocic, who I actually like a lot. Yeah. But just looking comparatively at what have you done for me lately, Rothwell's on a tear, and Miocic is coming off of getting torn up.
Yeah, you bet your sweet and sour ass that I think that Ben Rothwell deserves that shot more, especially the fact that twice now he's been in situations where he's supposed to fight, something changes, then somebody else gets a better situation.
Yeah. Well, that
drives me fucking crazy. The fact is Stipe was willing to step in on short notice. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Because that short notice fight didn't happen, Ben Rothwell should get that fight. Plain.
Yeah, I mean that fight's not happening for a couple of months here. That's plenty of time for him to turn around after he beat Josh Barnett with a submission. That's plenty of time to turn around and fight again.
Yeah, if they make any kind of argument that they're trying to protect his health and well-being, I mean, he didn't take hardly any damage in that fight. I mean, he was spectacular. I was very, very impressed with him in that fight. I just don't get it, man. And he's becoming very much like a Diaz brother in the sense that, especially it's kind of like when a company's like, oh, here's your Pepsi Crystal, take it, you'll love it. Don't tell me what I like. So when Dana White says, oh yeah, Nate Diaz isn't a needle mover, I'm sorry. I've loved watching Nate Diaz fight since he was on The Ultimate Fighter. I love the idea that he almost fought in a fucking living room with a marble floor. That was rad. Don't tell me who I am and am not a fan of. And so when you see, we as an internet community, we get so riled up about so much shit where, all of us are children of the internet. That's very much a unique element of this sport. We rally behind these guys. And I don't know if it's a concerted effort from the UFC where they're like, look, we say that they won't, and then they'll prove us wrong. That Stone Cold Steve Austin, you're not supposed to like this guy, so we like him anyway in defiance of the rules. Or if it's just, hey, fuck Ben Rothwell, and if he happens to get popular, so be it. What do you think, Brett?
Well, one thing I wanted to bring up is it's interesting because Ben Rothwell's on a 4-fight win streak, right?
Yes.
But the most recent start, 3 months or 3 of the fights that he's been in have come after that that elevated testosterone. Do you think maybe that they're punishing him a little bit because of that? I mean, in the sense that he beats Alistair Overeem in round 1 by TKO. He submits Matt Mitrione in round 1 with his go-go choke. He submits Josh Barnett in the second round by the go-go choke. this seems to me to be the kind of resume that how can they deny him? But the reality is he's been on this streak after a 9-month suspension. Do you think that between the way he looks, his sort of personality, which can kind of be a little bit aggressive, and he might be unreliable, he might be doing, performance enhancing drugs? Do you think that that's what's happening?
I think I think that's actually very, very possible as to why he's being held back. Look at Nate Marquardt. He got busted for elevated testosterone from TRT usage, and the UFC just cut him. And then when he came back, he didn't get really. I mean, he's still in the UFC, but he hasn't gotten very favorable fights. He isn't fighting all that often. He isn't fighting on huge cards. So he's a guy who is still kind of atoning for those crimes. I think that's very possible. And I also think that Dana White has been very outspoken about how he doesn't like theatrics all that much. And so I think that the Ben Rothwell robe and the song from I think Bram Stoker's Dracula and all of that, the war, I think it rubbed him the wrong way. Even though to us, like, he's in on the joke, bro. It's not like Ben Rothwell is sitting out there going, "Hey, I'm really the Dark Lord." It's, "Hey, I want your attention. Let's have some fucking fun." Because it's great in two ways. Either you're a fan of The Undertaker or you're a fan of Paul Bearer. And Ben Rothwell is both. Mm-hmm. He kind of has that tongue-in-cheek silliness, but he also has that, like, imposing figure.
Yeah, and, big dude, and he uses it well. He fights well. It's not like he's just entertainment. Like, he can compete. He is probably, like I said, the best argument for a title shot in the division right now. But yeah, I don't know.
I truly think it's unfair for what they are doing to him. I very rarely do I use that term in MMA, just because there is no hierarchy, there is no step ladder. You don't know for sure. You're never guaranteed anything. But he's just a guy who, especially that it's happened twice in immediate succession. First, he's supposed to fight Stipe. Stipe switches. Then Stipe just springboards ahead of him, and for what? Doesn't make any sense.
Even, to your point, and kind of in an even sadder way, who else is above Ben Rothwell in the rankings?
Cain Velasquez?
Yeah, and also Alistair Overeem. That guy he knocked the fuck out in one round? Yeah, he's above him in the rankings. Yeah, but if you look at...
wait, stop talking. I want the video to be on me when I do my shaky titty dance.
Shaky titty dance.
Okay, now you can keep going.
Okay, anyway, so yeah, Alistair Overeem is ahead of Ben Rothwell, even though he got knocked the fuck out when... all Alistair Overeem has done since he came back after that loss was beat Stefan Struve, which is fine. I like Stefan Struve, whatever. Fuck that. Roy Nelson, who's not even – is he even ranked at this point? I don't think. Yeah, he's 11, and then he beat Junior Dos Santos. Okay, like, how – Junior Dos Santos is ranked lower than Ben Rothwell. It just doesn't make any fucking sense.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And, there was a time where we were talking about Alistair trying to levy his wins into a UFC title shot, especially with the contract negotiations pending. And I think we're in a situation where he's probably got an inflated sense of value because he's recently signed and all these things, but he's just had a name for longer, a bigger name for longer. Because if you look at it, the casual fan who was a fan of Brock Lesnar is going to know Alistair Overeem because they're paths crossed, albeit, for the worst of Brock Lesnar. Whereas Ben Rothwell, I think if my memory serves right, he was suspended at that time, right?
What, when Alistair Overeem fought Brock Lesnar?
Yeah, my math might be wrong, but you get my point. Like, one guy was out for a year, and then Alistair's been consistently active, and against guys who have a big name, well-deserved or not.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess I'm really excited for the way that the heavyweight division is right now. I mean, all the way up till at least to the top 10. I mean, there's, other than Travis Brown, who I think is a fucking jackass, everyone there deserves to be there, I think, and are great fighters right now. Even Antonio Silva, who, is in 12th, he's a great fighter. His chin's a little suspect, and he hasn't been the same since he got taken off TRT, but even he. So all the way up to the 12 spots of competitive heavyweight fighters. And that's something that the UFC has long lacked. So it's great that it's in that position. It sucks that Rothwell is continuously just getting the shit, really. He's getting shut down even though he deserves it. But on that note, I think we agree that he probably deserves it more. We don't know what the fuck is going on. But to that point, I think, speaking of the heavyweight division, it's going to lose one of its top people. It's when Matt Mitrione now is going to Bellator.
Yeah, I don't think that the UFC realized the commodity they had in Matt Mitrione. Like we've talked about, we've defended Matt Mitrione's record on the show multiple times. He's a guy who every pro fight has been in the UFC. And, truth be told, his record in the UFC is commensurate with Travis Brown's. People thought that Travis was like, oh, so much better. But Travis Brown, I'm not saying he had necessarily a padded record, but he had a padded record. Matt Mitrione's an exciting, fun fighter with a great personality, and I think it's one of the greatest parts about this whole thing. And though it's completely a happenstance, Matt Mitrione is also going to be the play-by-play guy for Bellator kickboxing, which I think is awesome for him.
That's pretty cool.
I think he'll do a great job of it too. And he even made a great point in talking to Ariel Helwani on the MMA Hour. He said, "Hey, I don't need to know everything about kickboxing because I'm the fun guy." And that's awesome. Like, he gets the idea of what's going on, because I know you, just like I, have heard either pro wrestlers or other fighters try and take an announcing position and they just don't shut the fuck up. And they're like, okay, look, dude, I get it. It's a guard pass. I get it. Stop telling me everything he's doing. Yeah. This is a situation where he knows his business. He knows his audience. I mean, truly, Matt Mitrione knows his audience better than I think a lot of fighters. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I think it's going to be great for him to make that move over. And I think that this is leading into this thing where we were talking about before the broadcast got cut off before. Bellator, what I'm hoping they'll do is Bellator originally, under Bjorn Rebney, was very good about having homegrown fighters. They brought people up, they built their name, they made it competitive, especially built on their tournament format. But then as they got a little more into the freak show thing, as they moved over into the Scott Coker thing, it got more into, let's have these freak show fights and let's bring over people from the UFC and bring in these legendary people and focus on them. I'm really hoping that now that they're bringing over Mitrione, they're bringing over Benson Henderson, I'm really hoping that they decide to not just give them title shots right off the bat, or if they do, that they build it that way. They don't just say, and then they get title shots. It's, this person is deserving in some way. They have to do it that way. And I want them to build Matt Mitrione up. I don't want it just to be, oh, look, another UFC fighter. I guess he gets a title shot. Because I don't need UFC 2.0. I don't need it.
I largely agree with you, except for the heavyweight division in Bellator, because that Vitaly Minikov, I think is his name, he's not fighting. Yeah, and he's being very particular.
Russia 2014, but still.
That's what I mean. It's been so long, and he's being resistant, and he's being, everybody attacks Will Brooks for being a bad employee. This guy's a piece of shit when it comes to that. He's not being active. As far as I've seen, he hasn't had any injuries. It's just that he wants to fight on his terms. I'm sure it has something to do with the athletic commissions and whatnot. But I think that in this rare circumstance, I think Matt Mitrione should get the title shot, because I think that it'd be best for Bellator to create a popular division by getting rid of this guy. Because you can only look at the lightweight and the welterweight divisions for so long before you're like, okay, what else?
Right. And I'm just using Mitrione as an example of a larger situation. I mean, like, I'm not that worried about people coming in and getting automatic title shots. I just think that it's better to build them up, to build them into the narrative of Bellator, to make it a cohesive division, not just we bring people in for title shots and, it makes it seem like it's just UFC 2.0, and I don't need to watch that. The UFC sent those people away. I don't need to watch UFC 2.0.
That's a good point, but I think one of the things that you were in danger of, kind of to your point of it being UFC 2.0, like look at how Phil Davis just cleaned house. Right. It makes it seem like all your guys kind of suck. I think that, while I understand the idea, because it's twofold. Either we capitalize on a star and make him, our champion, or our champion wins. But in either way, that's why I sympathize with the idea of giving immediate shots, because it can validate their champion. But by and large, their success rate when it comes to guys coming over, albeit somewhat small, not that great, brah.
Yeah, so I would like to see that a little more development. And this also goes into talking about, Rory McDonald saying he's going to go with whoever pays him most, which, if Dana White is to be believed, will always be Bellator, because they'll never see anywhere near that market cap, what the fuck ever. But so let's imagine a world in which Rory McDonald comes over to Bellator.
Yeah,
what does that look like?
I'm mesmerized by the idea, and what I find so funny is the fact that he said it so nonchalantly. He was just of like, oh yeah, I'm going to fight out my contract. And Ariel was flabbergasted on the MMA Hour when they were talking about it, and I was too, because it didn't seem like he was on the show as a ploy. I'm not speaking ill of like Aljamain Sterling or guys, but you got to make hype, and that's one of the ways you do it is to build the sensation. Oh, I'm a free agent. You're dropping the hint. Benson Henderson, I'm dropping the hint. I'm a free agent, and it didn't seem like that at all. He even said like, oh, we're pretty close, but I just think I'm worth more, which is awesome.
Yeah.
He also 20. Oh, go ahead.
He also came out and said at the same time, he was like, I feel like I've made a lot of sacrifices. I've been good to the UFC, and I just haven't seen that returned. And I think that also speaks very well to his awareness as a fighter of his own value, and being willing to look them in the eye and say, hey, like, I've done a lot for you guys. Where are you? And if they don't come up and say, yeah, we see what you mean, then yeah, I think he should go. I think he should say, guess what, UFC, your name, your brand is not me, and it's not enough.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think that especially, he was talking about how he's expecting his firstborn daughter in July, and he's taken very hard fights. He hasn't been given fights that he's asked for. Why not? And truth be told, Bellator could definitely use an awesome Canadian to expand their market.
Yeah, and on top of that, to go to back to the topic of getting automatic title shots, I mean, Benson Henderson's going to fucking tear up their welterweight division just because we don't like Benson Henderson because of what happened with Frankie Edgar, but everything outside of that, I've grown to really like the way that Benson Henderson fights and his attitude when he's fighting. And so I think he's going to get their championship, whether they build him or give him the immediate shot. And then I would love to watch Benson Henderson versus Rory McDonald. I would love to watch that.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of sloppy when it comes to the size because Rory McDonald is a huge dude.
Yeah,
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he ended up taking their middleweight championship, just being plain. But I think that would be an awesome fight to see. I think it'd be a spectacle to behold. And I look forward to whatever prospects. One thing I wanted to touch on as far as free agency goes, it appears that Justin Gaethje and Marlon Moraes, the two World Series of Fighting champions, it looks like they're going to fight out their contracts through free agency. And one of the things that's interesting, I believe somebody pointed out that I think they're both managed by Ali Abdelaziz, the albeit parting on good terms, the former matchmaker of World Series of Fighting. Do you think that's just happenstance, Mr. Brett?
No, I don't think it's possibly happenstance because Ali Abdelaziz is kind of a scumbag, and it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if he said, oh, you're not going to have me take part in this anymore? Well, then I'm taking my fighters with me.
Yeah, I'm taking my ball and going home. And yep. I honestly, that could be very well what it is because, those are the two most defined names that World Series of Fighting has. And they're two champions. In one foul swoop, they could lose all of that. And then who do they have? Can you name for me a single World Series of Fighting guy who would be in the top 5 worldwide of any division? Besides Gaethje and Marlon Moraes.
Not in the top 5 conversation, definitely not. Not that I can name off the top of my head anyway, no.
Yeah, see, that's what I mean. Like, it would instantaneously make that whole brand obsolete. And people are already making fun of them for doing a show in like a gymnasium. I hate to say it, but they're kind of on borrowed time when it comes to comparing them to Legacy FC, Titan FC, Invicta, all these brands that are on UFC Fight Pass. UFC Fight Pass smokes World Series of Fighting. All their products, with the exception of Pancrase and RFA. Yeah,
so I think that it would. I also want to see Marlon Moraes go to UFC to fight guys like Aljamain Sterling because Marlon Moraes, along with Thomas De Almeida and Aljamain Sterling, were about 3 years ago, were just at the very top of the prospect list. All 3 of them, just huddling in one spot. Of these are the guys. These are the guys that are going to come out of nowhere and just fucking kill it, and they have been. And I've been wanting to see the Thomas Almeida, Aljamain Sterling fight ever since they both got into the UFC. And I've been waiting for Moraes to come over as well because I want to see all 3 of them go at it. I mean, they're all phenomenal. And that's one thing that I like about the lighter weights when it comes to things like, World Series of Fighting and Bellator. The lighter weights, they have a lot to offer, even up to the 155s in Bellator. They have a lot to offer. And so do I think that they're necessarily top 5? That's hard to say because their challenges have not been that great. But they sure have the tenacity. They sure have the will. I don't see why they wouldn't be able to come out and take it, at least give it a shot.
Yeah, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't commend Ali Abdelaziz for putting himself in an indispensable position. It's smart business. I mean, it might be kind of shady or whatever, but to our point, both those guys, the fact that we could put them with UFC guys, the fact that we would say that they're prospects on a much larger scale than World Series of Fighting is huge.
Yeah.
I would love to see them compete. If the Muhammad Ali Act ever did come over to MMA, as people have tried to rally lately, the idea that they would have multiple organizations competing, that's kind of interesting, but I just don't think it's fair to happen because it obviously creates an artificial sense of competition between the companies because they're frankly not commensurate. There's the UFC, right. There's everybody else. But the fact that those two guys specifically could be put on that UFC level is huge. And I think that it's a missed opportunity to not, if they let them go, they're pretty much just signing their own death warrant. Agreed?
Yeah, I can't really say much else. What does the World Series of Fighting have after that? Yushin Okami, John Fitch,
Jake Shields. Oh, no way. Jake Shields hates them and is upset that they're fucking him over in the contract negotiations.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know what the World Series of Fighting has except to go back to being the UFC Speeder League if they lose their champions.
I don't understand how their product is still on NBC, to be frank. I mean, I think that week in, week out, Titan FC and Legacy FC and all these other companies that I keep harping on, but I think they're putting out a better product with better production value. How does this place have a spot, much less on such a huge spectacle situation when they don't have stars, they don't have compelling fights, they don't have anything that really puts it in a global MMA spectrum? Kind of a waste. We were talking about the bantamweight division, so I have to talk to you about this. Brian Caraway recently said that he wants to fight Aljamain Sterling, but not because of his recent comments about him being a house husband and all that. Do you think that's a good fight?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Aljamain Sterling has been doing really well, and I think he matches up well against Brian Caraway. And the reality is that, like him or dislike him, Brian Caraway represents very much a gatekeeper status to the top 10 and maybe even to the top 5 at bantamweight. And so I think he's a good test. I think he's a good fight.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he would be, he's got a name and he's beatable, but he has also had the potential to make other guys look bad.
Yeah,
when he does well, other people do very poorly. And so I think that he's a dangerous fight for a lot of people, and I think that people are aware of it. And I think that Aljamain Sterling is a guy who could really use that competition and use that test because he's this guy who keeps saying, I need big-name fights, but then nobody of a big name wants to fight him. So I think that he should be sending Brian Caraway a very, heartfelt thank you for replying.
Yep, I completely agree.
All right, on top of some other fights that Brian Caraway is calling for, he thinks that Amanda Nunes should be the first to fight Miesha Tate for her MMA UFC bantamweight title. Do you think that that is a good fight?
Yeah, I think that goes right to the conversation we were having last week. I think that is the fight to make, the Tate versus Nunes fight, and then Holm versus Rousey. Let them settle their thing. I don't think it's going to happen that way, but that's the fight those are the fights I would make.
Yeah, I think that it's in terms of a meritocracy, that is what should happen. In terms of what will happen, it is not what's going to happen. On topics of other things that are not going to happen, BJ Penn trying to get a third crack at GSP by posting and accusing him of steroids.
Okay, so I'm going to somewhat ignore what you just said, but it's because I was going to make a point about this in general, and I hate to talk about BJ Penn. I prefer to think he doesn't exist, including his website at this point. But I don't want to hear any more of anyone else's bullshit about what Conor McGregor did wrong or right or anything else in that fight or leading up to that fight or who he is as a fighter or any of those things. Because ever since he lost, it's like a fucking field day. Everyone's just like, oh, we should have done this. He should do this. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Conor McGregor is doing things you cannot do.
Yeah, if he was so ineffective, why did everybody impersonate him at the Unstoppable press conference, right?
Exactly. Everyone's over here. Now everyone's got an opinion. Everyone knows what he should have done. Shut the fuck up. And the reason I brought that up off the BJ Penn thing is he's talking about how people, he's the only one that goes up into the 2 weight classes and fights and blah, blah, blah. It's like, shut the fuck up, BJ Penn. And shut the fuck up about GSP. Shut the fuck up about Conor McGregor. Everybody shut the fuck up about those guys. Including Matt Serra. Fuck it. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, that was super weird. I don't know if he was just trying to build, buzz about that Dana White looking for a fight. I don't know why Matt Serra was like, you should have taken a nap, dumb fucker. What?
Yeah.
Since when? Why?
Yeah, I like Matt Serra, but that was just one of those moments where I was like, dude, I know that he likes the Diaz brothers, as he was so candid about in that part, but it's like, come on, man. Like, give it up. Just let it go.
Well, I mean, I don't know. The whole shtick of the, Dana White looking for a fight, I couldn't get more than 3 minutes into the newest episode. It was just, I don't know. It's everything I don't like about the MMA spectrum. It's like the bro shit. Oh, why would a multimillionaire get tased? Give me one fucking reason that doesn't involve a police officer. Right? There's no point for it. It doesn't do anything. It's just silly nonsense, and it's for the grab-ass bro. I'm not the grab-ass bro. It's not my mentality. It's not my interest. So I think that whole show is just kind of doomed to not entertain me. And so the pageantry to try and build up that show, I don't like.
Yeah, I'm with you. I tried to watch it, and I couldn't get into it. And I think that I'm pretty malleable about that kind of stuff. And even I was just like, there's nothing here for me. I watched this 10 years ago on the Tap Out show. Done with this.
Yeah. And so you mentioned Conor McGregor, his former Taekwondo coach, killed a guy. Whoa.
Hey, isn't that a good thing? Like, as far as his rep goes, you should train with me. I killed a guy.
Yeah, right? I bet if I'm Conor McGregor, I'm sending him a mean text like, why didn't you teach me the one-punch kill before I fought Nate Diaz?
Who you been training with? Steven Seagal? What the fuck?
Yeah, not cool, bro. Uncouth. But yeah, that's interesting. And that's the thing, a huge thing that I think a lot of guys are very lucky they haven't been in that situation. It's some Con Air shit like we talked about off the air, but, it's obviously something spectacular. But fuck, people like, who's that gal who's always getting arrested? Juliana
Pena?
Pena. No, not her. Am I right? Pena. She's the one who ripped.
She's getting arrested. She did get arrested.
She's always getting arrested. She has pending. It's been multiple times, and she and her friends have videoed beating up guys and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, that's cool, but it's also hugely dangerous. And all we need is for somebody think of a high-profile fighter, not a coach. Think if Conor McGregor is on the Vegas Strip and some guy mouths off to him and says something wise about Nate Diaz, and he slugs the guy and kills him. Yeah,
and not even in the sense of hits him and kills him, but hits him. The guy's knees go. He hits his head on the way down. Hits a curve with his head, and then it's just a series of unlikely chances that all occur, and he dies.
And then people like John McCain are like, I knew it all along.
Yeah,
and you know what? They do right.
Yep, absolutely.
I think one of the huge things that we can always say, especially educated gentlemen like ourselves, is like, oh yeah, well, MMA fighters, college educated, well-mannered, very respectful. They understand martial arts. I mean, these are sensible guys. All it takes is one asshole, and everybody's like, look at all these assholes.
Yeah, and that's the thing is people do dumb shit, and I think that's one thing that doesn't get that fighters are not allowed enough of, but it still needs to be said is people do dumb shit. It just so happens that you're in a position where if you do dumb shit, it's not, you don't get a pass. It's dangerous for you to do that kind of dumb shit.
I wholeheartedly agree. One last thing I wanted to touch on. We touched on it incredibly briefly in the podcast, but I just wanted to kind of elaborate on it and stretch it out a bit, was the most dangerous places to be in the divisions. So we talked about there'd be 150 ranked fighters. If there's a top 15, there's 10 weight classes. I think the most dangerous being the 1 through 5 and the 5 through 10. Those are the guys who have the stiffest competition trying to vindicate where they are. If you fall between 6 through 9, you're fine. I feel like largely the matches are going to be somewhat interchangeable if you're in that area. But if you're trying to break in the top 5, that's rough, because the guys who are in the top 5 fighting anybody out of the top 5, incredibly dangerous. Same thing with if you're fighting unranked guys, it's incredibly dangerous for your career. Brett, am I right for thinking this is such a huge eureka moment in my thinking of rankings?
I mean, I think that it makes a lot of sense, and I think that especially when you frame it in how does it affect their career, I think you're right. Because if you're not top 5, then who are you? And if you get beat by an unranked person, then who are you?
Exactly. And it's not like you can supplement with income, with sponsorships and everything. You might be able to with your tenure, but I mean, that's certainly not enough. If you're an exciting fighter and you're, tread water and you're barely in the top, look at Ross Pearson's a great example.
Yep.
Like,
yeah,
he's not even ranked anymore, and he takes dangerous fights. He's taking a dangerous fight with Chad Lepre this weekend, and it's like, okay, you're not going to make a bunch of money because Slim Jim wants to sponsor you because you got that spicy punch.
Yeah. So I think that's a very, very good way to characterize what it's like to be in the rankings in those positions, and it's very, very good.
All right. So with that, this has been the second Overtime MMA broadcast for tonight. I hope you like this one because you're never hearing the other one. Brett, say goodbye to all these pretty people.
Bye, pretty people.